Today, on the first day of our New Year, it's common for people, maybe some of us here, to make resolutions or promises to do things a little differently perhaps. Some resolve to address the issue of their physical health, maybe by exercising or taking care to eat more in a more healthy way. Others might resolve to be kinder to people or to be more generous or to take time and reach out to people in need. Some promise to pray more or to attend Mass more regularly. Whatever our resolutions might be, we're all interested, of course, in making a new beginning for ourselves. The Church, too, has its own idea about how we might strive to begin this new year, and it offers us the person of Mary, the mother of Jesus, for our consideration. In the Gospel, we hear the story of how the shepherds visited the mother and newborn child in Bethlehem. And we're told that they shared with Mary the news they received from the angel about the birth of the child. And we're told in the Gospel that when Mary heard this and the people there heard the story, they were amazed. That's the word that we're given. They were amazed at what the shepherds were saying. And then we're told one very important thing. Mary kept all these things and reflected on them in her heart. What were the things that Mary kept in her heart? I imagine she had a lot to ponder. The circumstances of her pregnancy, the visitation of the angel, her visit to Elizabeth, the journey to Bethlehem with Joseph, the birth of her child, the visit of these shepherds, and more. Mary had a lot to ponder and think about. She probably gave thought to some of the more difficult things, like the disappointment of having a child in a stable because there was no room for them in the inn. Later, she would have pondered perhaps the fear that she felt when having to flee Israel when it became known that King Herod wanted to kill the child. She had to reflect and ponder over the meaning of the words of Simeon, who, when meeting the child Jesus in the temple, said to her, "A sword will pierce your heart." She had to reflect on the words that her 12-year-old son said to her when he was lost and then found in the temple. So Mary had to ponder many things, the joyful things, the wondrous things that happened to her, with as well as the worrisome and confusing things. Simply put, Mary reflected and prayed about all the things that were happening in her life, the good and the not so good, the joys and the sorrows, the certainty of how God was at work in her life, and the uncertainty about what the future would hold. Mary took all of these things to heart. Why? Because the heart is where we commune with God. She may not have understood the meaning of all the experiences she was having. She could not fully know what the future would hold for her, but she held these things in prayer, and she put everything in God's hands. She never dismissed the things that she didn't understand. She allowed them to remain in her thoughts and prayers, trusting that God would enlighten her when the time was right. And as we know, in time, as the child Jesus grew and matured, as he approached the time of his public ministry, she would begin to understand how God's plan was being unfolded, how God's plan was playing out for her and her son. And she was so confident and trusting in God's wisdom that she followed her son faithfully, even though she may not have fully understood what was happening. She stood at the foot of the cross when it all seemed to end so terribly. And even though she had to endure the pain of seeing her son betrayed, persecuted, killed, and buried, she never faltered in her belief that God would help her make sense of everything that was happening. And she was correct in her belief that God would help her understand on the day of the resurrection. Furthermore, on the day of Pentecost, when she received the Holy Spirit along with the apostles, all the things that she had pondered, all the things she had taken to heart in her life came to light. And just as the Holy Spirit enlightened the apostles about the meaning of Christ's suffering, death, and resurrection, so too the Holy Spirit opened up Mary's mind and heart and unlocked for her the meaning of all these things that she was keeping close to heart. So it's no wonder the early church looked to Mary as a guide and a mentor when telling the story of Jesus. The ongoing tradition is that she helped the apostles understand how Jesus' life came about and provided insight into his very life. She was able to do this because she kept these things in her heart. She prayed for understanding, and it was given to her. So during this new year, we might also do like Mary. We are called to ponder, to reflect upon the events of life. How many of us actually take time to reflect on God's blessings when they come our way? How many of us ever take time to ponder the meaning of the challenges that come our way? So often, we simply react to the things that happen without taking them up in prayer, without allowing God to bring meaning from them for us. If we don't ponder the meaning of life's events, blessings, and challenges, how can we ever know what God's will might be for us? So perhaps this new year we can follow the example of Mary and simply treasure all things in our hearts. We can treasure the blessings, the challenges, the joys, and the sorrows of life in such a way as to give God the opportunity to explain their meaning for us. We might have questions about life, our faith, our world, our families, our health, our church. Do we have to find an answer to these things in our own time? Can't we simply hold them in prayer and allow God to enlighten us as to the meaning they have? Wouldn't we find more contentment with life? Wouldn't we avoid unnecessary worry and anxiety if we trusted that it is okay to hold things, to ponder things, to reflect in our heart where the Lord can speak to us and bring us the answers we need? If we don't trust that God can bring meaning from such things, then who can we trust? So whatever this new year might bring, let us remember that we need the heart of Mary. Mary knew how to keep and ponder and reflect on the events of life, trusting that with God all things are possible.